the economy is really throwing curveballs at economists here in the United States and overseas. I mean, it's not that long ago that economists were predicting a steep, deep worldwide recession. Today, they're not saying that. There will be scattered countries that have a recession, but very few look like they're going to have an ugly time economically. Obviously, Ukraine and Russia, both in deep dives economically because of the land war going on in Ukraine with horrific loss of life and terrible injury rates, people wounded in combat, both on the Russian side and the Ukrainian side. But the war that looked like it was going to pretty much demolish the world's economies has not played out that way. And even as central banks around the world, including our own Federal Reserve, have been either in concert or in mimicking each other, have been pushing interest rates up and up and up, with the purpose being to squeeze inflation out of the world economy. The inflation has been, thank goodness, dropping around the world, and at the same time, the unemployment rate here in the United States and in several other countries just keeps staying at record low levels. Now, that's not going to last, but the absolute strength of the job sector employers, a recent survey from small businesses found that over 90% of small businesses cannot find an adequate supply of workers to fill job vacancies right now. And that's, as you see the headlines day after day after day, Google laying people off, and Meta, is that how you say it? The Facebook thing, laying people off, and Amazon laying people off, and company after company that were looking so hard for workers before, now shedding them in big headline grabbing kind of layoffs. The overall picture of the economy here remains very strong, and the inflation that was eating people's wallets up keeps moderating. And let's hope those two trends continue. But the ultimate is you can't fight central banks. And they are trying to slow economies down to get inflation not just temporarily under control, but get it back to more historical norms. And that's going to take a good while longer than Wall Street realizes or that you and I may realize. Because once inflation takes hold, a psychology grips us. And we live in that world of expecting everything to go up in price. And to a certain extent, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Plus, in the United States, with already the pre-existing issue of a significantly aging population and not nearly enough young workers to fill jobs, it continues to lead to price pressures on wages for employers. And good news for people who fill those jobs, but it is something that leads to more inflation that makes it tougher for the Federal Reserve to shrink inflation back to what are normal numbers, which is roughly 2% a year. So where does all this lead? What does all this mean that I'm talking about? It means that what you and I are going to experience is an economy that goes from overdrive into a lower gear. But the economy is not going to go into reverse, barring something terrible happening between us and the Chinese. Who knows what Iran would do? In other words, it's got to be an X factor that we can't identify right now that would change the trend line. And it means that a lot of regions of the country will continue to grow economically while others will see potentially going into reverse gear. But the overall picture for the United States is really solid moving forward and much better for much of the rest of the world than it even looked like 6 months ago. Does it mean that you just look full speed ahead with your spending and all that. No, because as I've shared with you before, the amount of credit card debt people are carrying is rising significantly. The interest rates charged on that credit card debt are very high. It means you have to keep your own economic house in order while we deal with a continuing wave of disruptive things that have happened to us. I mean, you think about COVID. COVID was like the wrong way driver running into us. I mean, it caused so many disruptions that still are playing out today. And so you and I have got to make sure our own finances are in order so that you're prepared regardless of which way the wind blows moving forward. But I can tell you those winds are blowing much more favorably than it appeared not too long ago.